What's up, everybody? It's me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and this is the Fantasy Football Podcast. Today, we're going to take a look at a little game of Would You Rather. That's right. I have selected two players from the same team at the same position, and I'm going to ask Derek Brown and Andrew Erickson who they think is a better fantasy investment in 2024. The answers could shock and surprise you, but either way, they're going to inform you. So let's check out what the guys had to say about this RB Would You Rather. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia. That, of course, is Derek Brown and Andrew Erickson, and it's you hanging out, playing a little game of Would You Rather. That's right. Today, I have created a board for the boys. It could be like a Ouija board. Maybe some weird spirits are going on. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. Perhaps the ghosts of fantasy football past will somehow come into the show and grace us with their presence. But we're going to look at 2024. We're going to look at players who play the same position on the same teams, but they have different ADPs. And we're going to talk about who is the better investment in fantasy in 2024, because there's some offenses we want pieces of and some players we want pieces of. But what are we willing to pay? What is the cost? That is the question. And is it more than Derek Brown spends on his different beard treatments? That is a very important question to ask ourselves. Andrew Erickson, are you a big game kind of guy too? Like, what's your go-to game you're sitting around on a rainy day? Just out of curiosity.
I mostly play Nintendo Switch, so I'm not like a hardcore gamer. Like, I'm the classic. I like the Marios, the Sonics, like those types of games. I am a big fan of Guitar Hero. I played that a lot while my fiance was on her bachelorette party, so I was rocking out.
So she's at her bachelorette party, having God knows what shaken in front of her, and you are home playing Animal Crossing. Is that what's going on?
I was playing Guitar Hero. It's rated T for teens. Animal Crossing.
There you go.
Ready to eat for everyone.
Derek Brown, you've been one to crash many a bachelorette party, I'm sure. What about you, board game wise? What's your favorite board game, Derek Brown? I want to get to know Derek Brown better today. Dare I say?
I'm not really that much of a board game guy. Like I play, if I'm going to play something, I play a lot of card games. So the family favorite is Uno. That in our family, that's a blood sport. I mean, it gets insane. Especially my 6-year-old man.
Attack? That's the one I like, where you have to hit the little button.
People show up with just blood all over their head.
Uno flip, baby. Uno
My son can't come to school today. He had a +4 and somebody knocked somebody out, you know.
Dude, so we play kind of like, I don't know what the real rules are, because we kind of play our own version of like where you can play if you have like 5 5s or 5 draw or reverses. So like my 6-year-old will get savage. She'll hold all the skip cards and she'll be like skip, 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 skip.
Wow.
7 cards later, Uno, and you're just like,
no.
I just got owned by a 6-year-old. I don't even know what to do with my life now.
There you go. Look, I highly recommend the Uno Attack. That's a fun version of Uno. What else is a fun version is looking at the running back position here and trying to figure out which one of these guys is the better investment in 2024. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this. And again, go to fantasypros.com. You could see the ranks, the ADP, the ECR, all of the above. It's all up there already. I know it's only June, but everything's already rocking and rolling, ready for you to get ready for your fantasy leagues. But I want to start here in Washington, because you have a new running back, a new head coach. You have Austin Ekeler coming to town with Dan Quinn now getting his second shot in the NFL. Austin Ekeler is currently RB 31 in ADP, overall 95 player. Brian Robinson Jr., RB 34, not that far off, ADP 108. So basically, we're looking at a round difference between these two guys. Now, Ekeler has broken down a little bit in the last few years, a big workload with the Chargers. We don't know exactly what this offense is going to look like because we haven't seen it yet, and we have a rookie quarterback running it. So, Debro, who is the better investment in 2024? Is it Ekeler at 95 overall or Brian Robinson Jr. at 108?
I'm going all be Rob, man. And you could tell me Brian Robinson Jr. was being drafted before Ekeler, and I would still be choosing Brian Robinson Jr. In a Cliff Kingsbury offense, I want the goal line back. And as well as, I mean, what have we talked about? Anthony Lynn's also in this front office now. We had questions and concerns about when Anthony Lynn was with the Chargers, and okay, well, is Ekeler going to get goal line work and stuff? I don't think that's happening for Washington. So I want the goal line back in the Washington Commanders offense, because I'm old enough to remember, boys, and we've talked about this on previous shows. 2020, Kenya Drake was 3rd in the NFL in rushing attempts inside the 5. The next season, James Conner was 2nd. In that same statistical category. So, yes, lots of touchdowns are coming for Brian Robinson Jr. Give me all the B-Rob in drafts.
All right, counterpoint. Jaden Daniels rushing equity, does it not hurt Brian Robinson's goal line upside a little bit?
Did a running back get hurt? I mean,
I was waiting for you to say, Sphincter says what? Like I didn't know what was coming out of your mouth.
Fair
there
rebuttal.
for a second. Yeah. Are you going to the mall today? Like what? What was that?
We always bring that up, but don't we also pivot to the point of running backs are also helped by quarterbacks with rushing equity? And for everybody bringing up immediately, because the first thing I hear always about Jayden Daniels is he's so small. Do we think that Washington is going to slam him in the goal line? Like if that's what's going to happen
Probably
when they
not.
get down to the 5?
Probably not. But
Probably
if he's
not.
at the 5 or the 10 and he's roaming around there, it's hard to keep a handle on him. Erickson, let's get your take on this Washington situation. 34th running back overall, Brian Robinson, or 31st, Austin Ekeler. Let's also keep in mind, too, those rookie QBs sometimes do like to check down when they struggle to read the defenses, and they take the little safety blanket guys, like the running backs who catch balls. And guess what? Austin Ekeler's one of those guys. So, Erickson, what do you think?
I'm on the Brian Robinson side here as well with Debro. And I think, again, to parlay the conversation you were saying about how, he's going to check it down to Austin Ekeler. Well, I think he's probably just going to run. Like we see with mobile quarterbacks, they don't necessarily check the ball down to their running backs out of the backfield. They just take off on their own. They call their own number. So that's why I don't really like Ekeler necessarily in this spot here, because his best attribute and skill set that he can offer is from a pass catching. And the way I only see him really seeing like a massive target share in this offense is if everyone behind Terry McLaurin just doesn't produce. Like we don't see Sennett produce, or Jahan Dotson continues to struggle after he did his sophomore year. Zach Ertz is dust. Like, okay, then Ekeler has to step up because no one else is stepping up in the offense besides Terry McLaurin, who I feel good about as that number one receiver in the offense. So Ekeler to me is, again, I just don't like his fit in this offense. Again, looking back at Anthony Lynn, what was the platoon that he had with the Chargers was Austin Ekeler and Melvin Gordon. And Melvin Gordon was the guy that scored all the touchdowns and had better rushing efficiency and was the guy you wanted in fantasy until they turned it over to Ekeler. And they're like, oh, now we're going to give Ekeler all the touchdowns after Anthony Lynn left the team. That's when Ekeler started scoring double-digit touchdowns every year after Anthony Lynn left. So for me, it's Brian Robinson. I'm not concerned about like how much he's used in the passing game. That's not really what his strengths are anyway, but it comes down to he'll be more efficient as a rusher because he's going to see less stacked boxes, because that's what happens when you have a mobile quarterback that you have to account for. So I like Brian Robinson as well.
Erickson, could these values flip-flop in a month? Could Robinson be ahead of Ekeler?
I think so, especially too when we get like preseason usage, and if Brian Robinson's out with the ones, it's like, okay, well, he's clearly like the starter, and you're seeing Austin Ekeler like he's the change of pace back, he's the third down back. Like Austin Ekeler has been like crying to the heavens to be like, guys, take touches off of me, like please, I don't want to break down. And so this is probably interesting from like a long-term view. Like this means Ekeler will probably be healthy for the majority of the season because he's not being slammed into the wall. Like he's probably there because he wants to be used there. But for fantasy purposes, I don't think we're going to see what we've seen from him the last couple of years.
All right, the next situation we're going to look at belongs to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Najee Harris, RB20 right now as of recording this. Again, these numbers will fluctuate and change, so go to FantasyPros to stay on top of them. ADP 67 overall in half-point PPR. RB27, Jaylen Warren, so 7 RBs down the trough, ADP 85. So this is a pretty decent discount here, Erickson, between Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris. In your opinion, who is the better fantasy investment this season?
I think it's Jaylen Warren, and I don't think it's particularly close. So, like, I have Jaylen Warren ranked ahead of Najee Harris, in half PPR and full PPR. Like, the thing with Najee is you're just hoping that he gets the red zone role. And we've seen this with Arthur Smith, where he doesn't necessarily, it's hard to project what he does in the red zone. Like last year, we thought it was going to be Bijan, it was Tyler Algier. A couple years ago, he is Cordero Patterson, who is currently a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, is on this roster. So I don't know if we can bank on, Najee's going to get all the red zone touches and he's going to score all the touchdowns, because over the last 2 years, I think this is a really interesting stat with Najee. Second halves of the last 2 seasons, Harris has scored 13 touchdowns. In the second halves of the last 2 seasons, he scored 2 touchdowns in the first halves. So he's burying you in a hole, and he's dug out the last 2 years. If he starts out slow for a third straight year, I think they're just going to go to Warren. And they're going to be like, no, we want Warren to be more of this featured back. Now, I don't think Warren's ever going to fully take over the RB1 role, because I think that Najee has done enough, and this team is going to be run heavy anyway. But again, like, I'm not afraid to fade Najee, because this guy's got all the volume he can handle the last 2 years, and he hasn't burned you yet. So it's like the same thing. So like, I get that they're going to run the ball a ton, but Najee's been top 10 in touches the last 2 seasons and has not cracked the top 12 in fantasy. So if there's any running back that you can fade that's going to get volume, it would be Najee, because he's done it the last 2 years and has not been someone that you regretted not drafting.
Well, here's the interesting spin on it, too, because you look at Najee Harris, Debro, 3 straight years in the league. He's had, more than 1,200 all-purpose yards in all 3 of them, over 1,000 yards rushing in all of them, 7 or more touchdowns in all of them. But he went from RB4 his rookie year, RB12, and then RB20 last year. Now, he still had more yards cumulative than we already saw out of Jaylen Warren last year rushing. We also had twice the amount of touchdowns. So when volume is king, why isn't it Najee Harris?
Because Jaylen Warren's hands down better, and he actually outscored him on a per-game basis last year. Jaylen Warren was RB29, and Najee Harris was RB30. So I want Jaylen Warren. It's always Jaylen Warren. And when you also look at what their prospective roles in this offense, and we saw this last year, Jaylen Warren's the freaking passing down back. Regardless, we can even kind of nudge it to the side that Jaylen Warren, and the numbers bear this out, is one of the best, if not the best, running back in the NFL on a per-touch basis. He's also the passing down back. And if we think Russell Wilson, now we can debate on how long he holds the starting job. If he holds it the entire year, look, we're talking about a quarterback that led the freaking NFL in checkdown rate last year. And whether we think that's Sean Payton or we think that's Russell Wilson, it still happened. And Jaylen Warren, if anybody's getting checkdowns in this offense, it's not Najee Harris. It's Jaylen Warren, baby.
Let's take a quick break in the action to tell you about DraftKings. We are this close to crowning an NBA champion, and with the action heating up on the court, it's even hotter at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered every single step of the way with same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more. Don't miss out on a second of the NBA season as it winds down. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Use that promo code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros. New customers get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. And now back to the action. An offense that everybody wants some pieces of is definitely the Miami Dolphins. They are fast in every single way you can imagine. And Achane, his stock right now is rising fast. RB9 in ADP right now. And I get it. I understand why people are excited. 11 touchdowns in 11 games. ADP 20th overall in half PPR. Raheem Mostert, RB30 right now, ADP of 91. Now, I understand it was a tough sell last year. Nobody would have believed Raheem Mostert, A, stayed healthy, B, would have scored as many touchdowns as he did. So asking that to happen 2 years in a row is probably asking for a lot. But we're talking about risk here, and we're talking about Achane, who is an incredibly talented guy, but also concerns about the frame we all have. I think you can certainly continue to speak about that. It's becoming an earlier and earlier investment because some people don't want to be left out when it comes to Achane's upside, which I understand. But Raheem Mostert here, almost as the 100th player off the board. Debro, I mean, what's to stop us from thinking that Mostert might be able to give us maybe 75, 80% of that and could be the better investment? So who would you rather have, the very early Achane or the super late Raheem Mostert, but still part of this offense and still a guy that scored a ton of touchdowns for them last year?
I think there's a really good case to be had for Mostert, and I think a lot of the risk is baked into where he's going in drafts and the age and everything else. None of the upside. Sadly, I'm still going with Achane in this equation. I'm just banking on the youth. I'm banking on the efficiency. I'm banking on the upside. And the other part about that, there's still some meat on the bone there. Like, Achane was the RB5 in fantasy points per game, and he's being drafted as the RB9, and I get the round 2 price tag, but when you take that shot in drafts, that's a home run swing. What you're saying is, I believe that he can do it again. I believe that he could be a top 5 back, a top 3 back, if he gets all of the work that Mostert at the goal line. If he gets and becomes the primary goal line back, which, who knows? Maybe that happens this year. I'm not saying that it definitively does, but if it does, and the efficiency remains, because he was second in missed tackles forced per attempt last year, boys. First in yards after contact per attempt. And we could say all these different things are not reproducible, but we have outliers every single year over multiple years. We kept saying, for years and years, Derrick Henry's going to fall off. That man's just built different, okay? Maybe Achane could be a similar kind of conversation.
Erickson, you and I have a complicated relationship with Devon Achane because we ladder bet him week 3 against the Denver Broncos. Ooh. We had 200 rushing yards that day, and the anytime multiple touchdown scorers we also had that day. Ooh. So we are partial to him. We have a soft spot in our heart. But I'm trying to do the hard math here. I'm trying to not be wistful for the past, and I'm trying to be realistic. And I understand D-Bros, he's money in the bank potentially. But isn't he the perfect candidate to also help your team go bankrupt as well when you're looking at what you have to pay for him and maybe more importantly, what you have to pass on to draft him now? The guys at that 1A wide receiver spot, the guys that are out there that can really make an impact for you every week that you feel a little bit less concerned in terms of the durability factor. And look, I get it. Achane is a very exciting player, but Erickson, in your opinion, are you comfortable going that far, that aggressively on him? Or just saying, you know what, give me a piece of Miami and give me the cheapest one I can get?
For me, it's still Achane, and because I think that he offers a certain special quality that you can't find really at the running back position later on. And again, you can look at Mostert. Oh, he's the value. Well, we know something's going to regress in this backfield, right? So you have a 32-year-old running back, injury prone, coming off 20-plus touchdowns. So either that's going to regress, you can bet against that, or you can bet against an uber-talented second-year running back who finishes a top 6 finisher in 5 of his 10 games played, who's 22. He's 10 years younger than Raheem Mostert.
I know.
So for me, it's like, okay, regression is going to hit this backfield.
He's also rounds more expensive. I guess that's what I keep coming down to. And I don't love Mostert, and he's 32, and that's probably the end of the discussion.
I just think that Achane is just the right pick. I'm not arguing that Mostert's not a good value. He probably is being undervalued. Like, I get that. But at the same time, when we look up a month into the season, he's on injured reserve, and Achane is the lead running back for the Miami Dolphins. You're not going to regret, I took him in the second round because that's where he should have gone.
I can't believe I'm defending Raheem Mostert. How did it come to this?
That's the thing. I don't have any belief in Mostert really being this running back that's going to replicate what he did last year. But Achane being able to replicate and probably improve what he's able to do last year from playing more games, that's what I'm more confident. That's where I want to push my chips in on a guy entering his second season.
D-Bro's going to pop a gasket, so let's go back to him a second. What do you need?
Can we also talk about, because we're not discussing here, and I think we're looking at Mostert from rose-colored glasses. What if he loses the RB2 role or loses that foothold to Jaylen Wright? Like, what if that happens?
Well, look, we can play not even injuries.
But seriously, but we're talking about Mostert is such a value. Is there no risk outside of the age that he can lose some of his footing to a younger and more explosive back?
Look, we could play that game
bigger back.
But couldn't we also play that game of what if, Devon Achane goes out there? Remember, he was hurt in the preseason before we even got to the season, which is why his draft stock plummeted. And I liked Achane. Like, we were on these shows last year. I say, hey, this guy's free. Take him. He is fast as hell. He can certainly get us some fantasy points. And then he got hurt right before the season and went, I guess that ship has sailed probably. But even if there's enormous regression for Mostert, look, he did play 15 games last year. I'm not saying he scored 18 touchdowns. But if he played 13 games and scored 10, is he the better investment than Achane, who, let's play the game of saying, plays 13 games this year and has enormous value, but maybe he's not there for you in the fantasy playoffs? Like, there's a lot of scenarios that you can paint out here that are very dangerous. I think here's the better question to ask both of you. Andrew Erickson, are you interested in buying the running backs in this offense or the wide receivers in this offense at their cost?
Ooh. I mean, I think that the best value player is Jaylen Waddle.
I agree with that 100%. That's my take.
So if you're like, you can only draft one Dolphins player, I'll draft Jaylen Waddle. So if he's in the same range as Achane, then I'll take Jaylen Waddle over Achane.
Because we all want the Dolphins offense. It's fun. It scores fantasy points. It wins championships. So D-Bro, same. Like, I look at Waddle. Look, Hill as a top 5 player. Okay, I'm sold. Jaylen Waddle, where he's going now, is criminal in my opinion.
Yeah.
Do you think that Waddle is the best of anybody in this offense if you just want to get a piece of it and not have to pay the price for Achane or the first top 5 pick overall for Hill, or even, it's really late, but Mostert scares the heck out of me because he's 32?
Yeah, I think it's totally fine. Like, I think Waddle is a fantastic buy right now, and I've really come around to that. Like, there were so many holes to poke into his profile and his usage last year. The other side of this that I keep kind of coming back to with Miami is so much of the touchdown equity was run through this backfield, and we talk about things that don't happen year over year over year. So much of the touchdown equity went through the backfield. What if that regresses and goes through the passing attack? And then obviously the primary beneficiary of that would be Jaylen Waddle. So, yeah, I agree.
All right, let's do another fun one here. This is a big cavern. We're talking about basically a first-round pick. Jahmyr Gibbs of Detroit, RB4, ADP 12. Deservedly so. Love him at the turn. You're going to give me Gibbs at the turn? I'm listening. Or RB21, ADP of 77 currently, David Montgomery. So, Erickson, I want to start with you on this one here because we're talking about David Montgomery still seeing a lot of those goal line carries, but you saw Jahmyr Gibbs really take off in the second half last year. Is there a scenario where Gibbs just kind of leaves Montgomery in the dust altogether, or do you think this is still split and maybe Montgomery is the cheaper investment? You can still get a piece of the backfield, still get some upside, some touchdown equity at a lot lesser cost, and take some wide receivers at the turn?
Well, I think Montgomery is the one that's kind of being boosted by the situation, right? We're talking about how, you always want to avoid like these dead zone running backs where it's like, oh, well, it's all situational based. And even though Montgomery is viewed as a 1B back, like we like him because he plays on the Lions, right? Mm-hmm. Like we wouldn't like him if he was on another team, probably if he was on the Patriots. Like we wouldn't like him as nearly as much because we know that he's much more situational.
You don't like anyone on the Patriots nowadays, you and me. So.
I like Ramondre, but that's for another time. So Gibbs,
I'm not going to play that game on
we saw Gibbs last year, week 10 onward, Gibbs,
I'm with you,
averaging
Erickson.
15 points per game, the last 12 games, which was better than Monty, which is at 12.9. And so even though their snaps and touches were basically split from week 10 onward, you also saw them evenly split the red zone usage. 5-yard line, like it was distributed evenly between the guys. So they were leaning on Gibbs more in the red zone inside the 5-yard line. It wasn't just, oh, Dave Montgomery, we're at the 5, let's give it to Montgomery. That wasn't the case. It was, okay, Gibbs, we are featuring more in the passing game, in the red zone. And we know Gibbs is the preferred running back in the passing game. Mm-hmm. So you have a team that's going to be playing in a dome for almost all of their games. You have a pass-catching running back with an immobile quarterback who's going to be checking the ball down a ton to Jahmyr Gibbs. I just think, look, he was 15 points per game over that last half, and that placed him just outside the top 5 fantasy running backs in terms of per scoring on a per-game basis. So, look, we see running backs get bigger roles in year 2 all the time.
Yeah.
Right? And the fact that Gibbs was able to carve out such a big role already against a very capable running back in his own right in David Montgomery. Look, David Montgomery is fine, right? He's not the worst running back in the world, but I don't think he's the best. Like, there were times where we were calling for his job over Khalil Herbert in Chicago. Like, don't forget that happened. Khalil Herbert was a 6th-round pick, and there were times where, like, dude, Khalil Herbert's going to take David Montgomery's job. Now, that didn't end up happening. Montgomery was really productive last year, was a great value last year, but I don't see how Montgomery is so much different than drafting him last year. Like, he was going way later last year, but I think that his projected outlook is probably pretty similar, whereas Gibbs, it's year 2, baby. Like, the training wheels are off for Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think that he can really take over this backfield. So I'm going to take him at the turn.
This feels to me like the aftermath, like a lesser version, like the Temu version of the Saints backfield where Kamara came in. It was Ingram and Kamara, and it looked really good on paper, and then Kamara just left him in the dust. That's what it looks like to me. Now, I'm willing to pay the Jahmyr Gibbs premium because I do believe in the player. I believe in the scenario. And I think the premium is actually worth it. Debro, what do you think about these two guys? I know Montgomery's the discounted player and Gibbs is the premium, but is the premium the better investment here?
Hell yes. I'm paying the premium. Yeah. I'm going with Gibbs. And the other things that I want to add on to what Erickson was talking about, how this backfield split worked out last year after Montgomery came back. So weeks 10 through 18, the touches might have still looked pretty similar, but if you look at the snap rates, this was all Gibbs, and it honestly wasn't even close. So weeks 10 through 18, Gibbs played 65.4% of the passing down snaps. I don't think anybody's going to be surprised by that. But when you look at the red zone usage for him, Jahmyr Gibbs also played 63.4% of the freaking red zone snaps. And he led the team in snaps inside the 10 and inside the 5 versus these two players. So while the touch counts could have looked very similar, the snap counts were massively in Gibbs' favor. So if that tilts with the touch counts and it follows the snap counts in 2024, yeah, dude, Gibbs is a huge buy. And I understand the price is heavy. I'm willing to pay it.
If you're watching on the YouTube channel, I want to hear from you. You drop your comments below. Who do you prefer in Washington, in Detroit, in Pittsburgh, and in Miami? Drop your comments below. Who is the better investment in terms of running back? If you enjoyed this video, and I know that you did, click on the next one to get ready for your fantasy football drafts, because draft day is around the corner and fantasy football waits for no man or woman. So get prepared, get ready, and subscribe to the YouTube channel Fantasy Pros right now. Drop your comments below and ring the bell till it goes ding. That'll do it for me, Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.